Good evening to all of you. Before we start today's session, please feel free to do event check-in. This will give you access to additional resources and information about events that we are running on Reactor, which are around similar topics to today's session. Also, you will be able to access links from today's session. I will share the event check-in link with the event ID in the Q&A section shortly. Also, we have launched our Reactor group on LinkedIn. Please feel free to join the group to get the latest update on session happening on Reactor. I will share the joining link soon. Thank you all once again for joining us today. My name is Rashmita and I'm the event planner for Microsoft Reactor Bengaluru, India. This session will run over the next 60 minutes, including Q&A. The session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our Reactor YouTube channel within 3 to 4 days. I will share the link to our YouTube channel in the chat section soon. Quick word on a code of conduct. We display this at all Microsoft Reactor events that we run, and it's just a reminder to be aware of others. The key thing to take out here is to be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, being kind and considerate in the way you engage. The chat will be open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. Also, please keep your mics muted during the session. I would now like to welcome Aditya, our speaker for today's session. Aditya is a Microsoft Gold Learn Student Ambassador, MLH Coach for tech communities, and a senior student pursuing computer science and engineering from Amity University. He has worked in various technologies such as .NET, Microsoft Azure, etc. He has also been awarded for Azure Heroes, Community Hero, and AI Ambassador. But for now, I will hand over to Aditya to begin the session. Over to you, Aditya.
Thank you so much for that, Rashmita. Hi, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. First of all, huge thank you for joining in today. I'm really excited to be here with all of you. We're going to spend this day just learning and probably trying our hand at a... All right, is there an audio issue?
Probably I will request you to join us back once again. Just log off and join us back.
Okay, because I think Palak says it's all good. Okay. Folks are able to hear. In that case, I guess I'll continue. We're getting enough responses here in the chat. So yes, today's topic is it's a pretty fun topic, something that we all come across on a regular basis, especially as we're trying to, work, share our own projects, collaborate with others, but not one thing that we appreciate all the time, and that is Markdown. So we're going to have a lot of Markdown being worked with today, and then we're going to take a step further to maybe try and get up our own little website using just Markdown and GitHub, which is pretty cool. After that, there's going to be a fun hands-on activity as well. So I'd love for you all to stay active, engaged throughout, and yeah, we're going to have fun with this session. So it's all purely going to be with me on my browser with GitHub. So I hope you're all going to enjoy this. Before we start, there are a couple resources that I wanted to talk about. So I'm just going to share my screen. Now, folks, while I bring up my screen, I'm going to have you all here on the right side. All right. So if I look here, it means I'm looking at Teams. So you don't need to worry about me not being able to see. If I'm just looking at the side, it just means I'm looking at you all. All right. So let me now go ahead and bring up my screen. Yeah, I think it should be visible now, I guess.
Yes.
All right. It should be a Chrome window. So the first resource that I wanted to talk about is this little launchpad that I have. You should be able to find it in the chat as well as if you check in to the event. All right. So for this particular session, when we talk about collaborating with others with Markdown and GitHub Pages, I did use this resource to learn initially to get my hands active and better understand what Jekyll is and how GitHub flavored Markdown really assists us when we're working not only just to build our own readmes and documentation, but even as we go ahead and work on our issues, pull requests, all of that. So it does really assist with collaboration, and GitHub Pages is really just a great tool for you to get your own websites for your test projects and all up and running. So I am going to, well, I believe the link is there in the chat, and if you check in on on the Reactor check-in page, you should be able to obtain this exact link as well. The second thing that I wanted to throw in is Jekyll, the Jekyll documentation. This is also something I shared in the chat earlier. Basically, Jekyll is a static site generator that takes, text in your favorite markup language and uses that to create a static website. The fun thing is that with GitHub Pages, you actually have an inbuilt static site generator that utilizes Jekyll. So we're going to be using Markdown with Jekyll to build a little website for ourselves as well. We're going to do that in the meantime, though. So for now, let me just go ahead and take you to GitHub. I will zoom in here just to make sure it's comfortable enough. So this is just our normal GitHub layout, and pretty standard, something we're all comfortable with. So I'm going to go ahead, create a new repository just for this session, because we're going to be working with the README, we're going to be working with Markdown, so it's something that's going to help us a lot. So I'm just going to name this as React MD GitHub. This is just to designate, that it's for the Markdown and GitHub session. That's just my own naming process. You can, if you want to create a repository to work along, you can name it whatever you want. I think we have one member here. If we could just, yeah, thank you. I'm going to leave the description for now. That's all right. That's not something we need to worry too much about. The repository I'm selecting is public because, well, I want you all to be able to access this repository later. Plus, it's going to be essential for our activity we have. All right. As I initialize this repository, I'm going to add a README. That's where I'm going to show the basics of Markdown. Typically, it's a good idea to add a git ignore because it allows us to track files that we don't want to keep along. In this instance, however, we don't necessarily need it, so I'm going to let it be. And I'm going to keep a license here. It's always a good idea to have a license on an open source product because what happens is on any of these products or projects, the license is what tells how folks can utilize this project, collaborate on it, contribute to it. Contrary to popular belief, having no license doesn't mean it is free to use for all. It means it is essentially unusable by anyone else. Therefore, technically, while it is the source is visible, it isn't open source. So it's always a good idea, a good practice to have a license in your projects. All right. This is just a marketplace app that I have. Considering with this project, I'm not going to have images, so I'm going to leave this out, but it's just a little bot that optimizes your images. So I'm just going to create a repository for myself, which is where we're going to be working today. And it seems like I don't have a README. Yeah. Oh, just a setup thing. So now that I've created my repository, we have our workspace ready. I want to understand if there's anyone here who hasn't worked with GitHub in the past, so I can probably do a little introduction to what this platform is about, how you can utilize it. So if you could just mention in the chat, that would be great. Okay, all right. So we have one person here. That's all right. Thanks a lot for letting me know. So GitHub is essentially, well, it's a platform that allows you to host, maintain, track the progress of your projects, to be able to distribute and share them. It is built on top of the Git version control system, thereby the name GitHub, because Git and hub are the two words that are coming together here. So it is one of the largest collections of code in the world, and it's definitely a great place to work because well, it allows you, of course, to collaborate with others. There are a lot of features that let you work with other folks, such as if you have a project, you can have documentation using the readmes here. You can create issues to figure out problems or enhancements or whatever features you want to add issues, let you track that. Pull requests is another feature that allows people to contribute to your project or just lets you actually break your project into multiple workflows and have them all come together. Apart from that, projects allow you to track the progress of your projects using Kanban boards, which is pretty cool. GitHub Actions are another little feature that we have here that allow you to automate certain processes like your deployments, for example. So we've got quite a few different features and offerings here. Apart from that, you can actually track your releases, the releases of your project, or in case that you want to deploy your project as a package, you want to like maybe an npm package, for example, or so GitHub allows you to track and manage all of these different aspects of your project here. So it's definitely a great tool that way. In our case, considering we were talking about Markdown, the best place probably to play around with Markdown here is the README, because as you can see, the README was created in a .md format, which is, well, it designates a Markdown file. Now, Markdown is another sort of a markup language, um, just how you would have HTML. It does have a certain structure that we follow that is a little more human readable, unlike HTML, which has certain tags. So that's exactly what Markdown was intended for, to simplify um, the the writing and the reading process to make it more human friendly. And that's why it's great for simple applications platforms, especially blogs, for example, which is something we're going to explore today as well. So stay tuned for that. Um, as far as learning resources for GitHub go, yes, GitHub has their own learning labs that I can share closer towards the end. For now, because we're not actually working with Git directly on a version, well, on a using the CLI or Git Bash, we're going to be working in the browser. We'll use code spaces in the middle, or we're going to be directly working with GitHub's own editor. So that's not something you'll need to worry about. Whether you have Git Bash installed or not, that's totally okay. We're going to be working here. So this is the README here that is in a Markdown format. Uh, the fun part about this is this is actually something you can use to write any documentation you want, and you can use features of Markdown, which I'm going to get into. So the first thing we're going to discuss is a heading. Now, if you've ever tried HTML, or even if you look at Google Docs, you always have a heading 1, a heading 2, a heading 3, a heading 4 to designate different sizes, right? So we have headings just in a similar manner here in, well, in Markdown as well. And the way we designate those are by adding the hash signs here. So if I write, heading 2, or let's say h3 here, I'm gonna do another one. This is the equivalent of how you would have an h1, h2, h3, h4 tag. And a really cool thing about Markdown is, and with GitHub particularly, is that you can actually preview the content that you have. So I can actually look at how it would read off for me when I go back, when I, well, commit my changes. Committing another term that I'll get into very soon. So we've got headings here. We've got, of course, you can go ahead and write your different text. I'll just write hello reactor. Hello. Yeah, so that's just hello reactor. That's a simple text format that you would have, comparable to how a paragraph or a p tag would go in HTML. Aside from that, you can have lists. So if you can have numbered lists that, let's say, well, let's just use n1. That's the example. Another cool thing about Markdown and GitHub is that you actually don't need to type all of these numbers individually. If you've started a list, the GitHub flavored Markdown here, it detects that, so you can actually, well, you have that automatically come up for you, and these will be visible as a list here to you. So that's how it comes. That's the example that's comparable to an ordered list here if we compare with HTML. If you want to talk about a bulleted list or an unordered list comparable with HTML, then you can actually have the asterisk and go with, we'll just use L1, L2. So that actually would compare just how you would have in an ordered list. You can also use the hyphen sign if you don't want to use the asterisk. So if I just go with, I don't want to use H again, but okay, K1, we'll just use K1. So if you have a hyphen, that actually compares with, well, you're an ordered list as well. You can also have links embedded in your content. So if I add my portfolio, for example, if that's what I want to add here, the format for a link is essentially, well, we use the square brackets and the curly bracket, your round brackets here, not the curly ones. In the square, what you would do is you would have whatever text you want, and behind that would be your hyperlinked link. So if suppose I want to add my own personal portfolio, I could just, well, have a link as is, and that's how it'll come up for me. I'm not gonna click on this right now. I'll actually, I can right click and show. So if I right click and show, it's gonna take me to my portfolio. That's because that's the link I had there. When working with GitHub Markdown, the one thing to remember is that it doesn't take you to a new tab. If you click on it, it's going to change in the same tab. So because we aren't committed, that's why I'm not changing this right now. You can also have images embedded. So suppose this is an image that I kind of want to embed here. What I'll just do is, let me just get the link for this, and I'll show how you can embed an image. These are basic features of Markdown that I want to discuss. So yeah, if suppose I'll keep a heading here as well. Let's change things up. Let's bring back headings. My image. So if I want to have my image embedded here, what we do is it's very similar to how we had a link embed, but it's just we will have an exclamation mark at the start. So in this case, the image, the content in your square brackets will be your alt text. So I'll just write Aditya here. And if I put my link in there, it's going to show my image now, which is pretty huge. So I'll probably just remove it from here. One thing though that I've noticed about Markdown is that it's not easy to, play around with the image size. But the good thing is you can actually have HTML there directly as well. So that works out. And if suppose the link is incorrect and there's nothing that redirects there, so in that case, it'll just show your alt text, like how it wouldn't, just how if you had a link in HTML, if you had an image there and there was an issue with the address. So it's pretty cool that way. I think after that, there are a few other fundamentals that I want to take, that such as, bold, italics, all of that. So in order to have your content as in a bold format, all what you got to do is you need to place it between a set of two asterisks. And what this does is it makes your text bold. If you want italics, for example, that's you need to put it between one asterisk. That makes it turns it into an italic format. And I think this is also italics. If you have an underscore here, so all of this is something that you can preview. Now, if you notice that we had these three things, these three little pieces of text and different lines, but here it shows the same. A reason for that is with Markdown, in order to designate a line break, you need to add two spaces after. So if I add two spaces after now it'll show you that these are in different lines. This happens if you have text in consecutive lines. It requires two spaces before you break it. If suppose there is a gap in the middle, however, it will show a larger break, like in the case of, well, hello reactor and then the list. So that's a larger break that we have. All right. So these were some of the basics of Markdown that I wanted to take ahead. And now that we have this little readme with all of this text ready, we can, I'll tell you what, I'll bring back that large image. Now that we have our text ready, we can now commit the changes. Now a commit is essentially a step taken and it kind of saves it on your version control system. Essentially, it takes a snapshot of your code at that point of time and saves it. So in this case, we're committing the changes of this specific, this specific README file. If you look here, you can add a commit message and an optional extended description. The commit message here is going to be mandatory. So for this, I'll just add a message, add basic Markdown. It should be a relevant description typically. So that's why I've kind of written add basic Markdown, because that's what we've been discussing earlier. And the optional extended description is something you don't need to worry too much about. Now, there are two things here that you might see that say commit directly to main branch or create a new branch for this commit and start a pull request. The main, so, in order to understand this, I think it's best if we visualize how, your Git flow works. Because this is a direct reference to how Git works. So whenever we work with Git, what happens is that we work the commit history comes up as a tree essentially. So if you're working on the main branch, think of it as the central branch that's always straight. Sometimes when we want to work on different features or we want to have separate contributions, but we don't want to mess around with that original functional main branch, we branch out your commit to a separate branch of a different name. So that, you could imagine that it's a little separate branch here that we have. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to keep working on that particular feature or addition that we have without changing the functioning of the original, your original branch here. That was the main branch. In this case, main is the default branch. If some of you have been working with Git for a while, you probably would have seen master branch written instead, which is essentially the same thing. But GitHub essentially brought this change here in order to, because the word master does have certain other implications that aren't very positive and can and well it was done in order to make GitHub particularly a little more inclusive for everyone. So that's a bit about branches. We'll play around with how to create a new branch later. For now, we'll just commit this directly to the main branch. So if I commit my changes now, you'll be able to see that, this file saved here. If I go back to my repository, let me just close my website, you'll be able to find this here directly too. And we can actually track the commits that we have. So the first commit here was the initial commit, which you can look at, and what that had was just have us add a license and that basic readme we had. And the second commit, one second. Yeah, the second commit basically made a change to this first readme. So you can actually track and add comments to all of these changes. And if you look at these little symbols here, these designate the same as well. I actually forgot that there was one little thing along with in Markdown that I wanted to show, and that was how you can add code. So I'll just come back here. Now, if you look at your keyboard, I'm not sure how to pronounce this symbol, so I'm just going to refer. If underneath your escape sign, there is a key that allows you to add this specific symbol. If suppose you have, an opening and a closing set of 3 of these, this allows you to add a code sample in the middle. So if suppose I had a little function here, void main, a little bit of C# reference there. If there's anyone who's working with C# and .NET, you'll probably recognize. And suppose I was to add just a console dot write line that said, hey, I'll tell you what, I'll show you how branches work right now. Code example, it's a good idea to, name your branches in a good manner as well. So I'm just going to write code example readme. So I'll show you how branches help us out here, as well as add a code sample for you. You can also keep a single line sample if you want. If you use the same symbol and keep 2 of them, you can actually have a little piece of code here. So those are just how you would add code samples. And if we look at the preview, Oof, large image. You can see those there. So that's how you can present code samples, and it actually allows you to copy that directly as well. I don't think it allows that for a single line, but yeah, for a multi-line, you can actually copy it directly off here. So I'm just gonna name this commit as add code sample, and we're gonna create a new branch. Now, as you saw that option, it said, that you can add a branch and create a pull request. And typically you would add a description here um, in order to explain what exactly, what change you've made, because this is essentially a description of a certain feature or an addition that you would make. Whatever contribution you have, your pull request is what defines what and why this is, which is what makes your pull request so important. So I'm just going to add a little code sample here. I'm just going to mention that I added a code sample to the README here, and we're going to create a pull request. Now, while this pull request is up here, I'll take you back to the repository. If we look at the main branch of the repository, you will notice that the code sample is actually not visible here. But let's say if we hop over to our branch that we have, this branch will be able to show, which is what I was referring to. When we work with Git, we look at these as trees, and this is a branch that is separated from your main. What the pull request does is it allows you to bring that branch back to your main once you're done working with it. All right. So if for now, if suppose I was to go over to pull requests, I open this pull request. Because I know it works, I merge it. What this merge will let us do is it will actually bring that pull request, that addition, back to our main, which is very helpful when we're collaborating with each other, because what happens is that if suppose we want to collaborate, what you would do is you would take this repository, fork it, which would make a copy of the repository on your system. You add whatever you want, and you actually send those changes back via pull request. So that's how these work. And if anyone wants to try that, we're gonna have a little demo of that, and just a practical example of that as well. So now we've played around with Markdown, we've seen how GitHub works, but what exactly is GitHub Pages? Right, that's something I've been talking about a little, just playing around with. So the next thing we're going to explore is GitHub Pages now. For that, in order to enable GitHub Pages, you need to go to your settings. And if you look at this little list of tabs here, you will find pages here on the left. It does explain what GitHub Pages are, which basically says, it's designed to host your personal, organization, or project pages from a GitHub repository. It works with any static source you have. So if right now I set my source to main, you can actually set it to the other branch as well, but for now we'll keep it at main. Now I'm setting the folder as root for a reason. If I set it as, because what root will do is it will look at the repository just as is. If suppose I had a docs folder, which is what I wanted to work into, which is actually a case that people use this very often for. And because with your larger projects, you might just want to use GitHub Pages for documentation with Jekyll. So that's why docs is also an option, but for now we'll keep it at root. If we just go ahead and we save, it publishes a site for us at this certain domain. So if just to understand the domain, if Aditya Oberai here is my GitHub ID, and all GitHub pages are hosted on a domain that is basically your id.github.io. Quick tip: if you actually create a repository that says adityaoberai.github.io, and you run that link, that allows you to directly publish to the root of this domain. In this case, since we had a separate repository, it's gonna add another little root there for us to access. So if I open this in a new tab, right now it's gonna show that there isn't a little page here. I don't think that should have been the case. Okay, let me just have a look at that once. I guess I know why that's happened. That's because we actually don't have a website here up and running on this right now. That's essentially why. Funny, but yeah. So next thing that we want to do is actually start working with the GitHub Pages website. And we're going to use Jekyll here for that purpose. So in order to set up Jekyll, the first thing we need to do is create a config.yaml file. All right. And fun thing, you can actually create files here directly. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we'll create a code space for us. GitHub code spaces are essentially a cloud instance, it's a cloud instance of VS Code essentially that what it does is it takes a code space and runs it in a container. So if you look at this UI, I'm sure it seems pretty similar to what you've worked with in the past because, well, it's essentially like VS Code. And a fun fact there is that before this became GitHub Code Spaces, it was known as Visual Studio Code Spaces, before which it was called Visual Studio Online. So this is something you can actually use as well. Now, first thing that we need to do in order to work with GitHub Pages here is, well, create a config file, right? And this config is actually a necessary file because this helps us define a few different features, about this particular website that we want to create. So the first thing I'm going to do is, well, I'll add a theme. In our case, we're going to use a theme called Minima. There are a few other themes that you can use. A lot of them are open source, and I'm going to show you how you can access some other themes as well. For the title, we'll just call it Reactor Workshop. You can add a few other aspects as well, like author, in this case, Aditya Oberai. If you're working on your own website, you can change that. You can add fields like the Twitter and GitHub username as well. So I'm going to add my Twitter username. GitHub has a similar format where you basically just replace Twitter with GitHub, and that's all it is. So, I'm just gonna have this here, Aditya Oberai 1. That's my, well, Twitter username. That sets up our config. And the next thing we're gonna do is create an index.md. Now, for those of you into web dev, you probably know index is that file that you come across first whenever you're creating a little project of your own. So we're gonna we'll keep it in bold. Hey reactor, and just text that I'm creating here for us. I'm gonna add another bold file value. Thank you for joining today. And it seems like this repository isn't initialized, which is kind of funny because, well, anyway, I'll just work with the terminal here. Let me look at the git status once. Yeah, well, that's functioning. I think this might just be a little source control factor where we're having a little trouble, unfortunately, but anyway. So I'm just gonna do, I'm gonna add both of these files to my stage. In order to understand what add is, you'll probably need a little more of a refresher in Git, which I'll take you, I'll share some resources for that later. I was hoping to just show it directly from source control. Unfortunately, we're not able to see that, but anyway, that should be okay. The commit message, as I discussed earlier, in this case, we're gonna have a commit message, and I'm gonna mention create config and index. Yeah. So we have a commit, and all we need to do from this workspace is just push it back to our origin, which this will manage for us. So if we go back to, well, our repository, let me just take you back there. You will see that we have a new commit here. It shows you your merge as well. So that's pretty cool. And then, we have a commit here. Now you'll see that there's a little tick mark here, which shows us that a GitHub Pages, website has been created for us. So now that we go back to the website, we see this little page here that mentions that initial message we had on index. And along with that, if you remember the little information we added initially with our Twitter and that name, the author name, and the title, that's also stated here, which is pretty cool. Now, another fun thing that you can do with GitHub Pages, you can actually with Jekyll particularly, you can have other Markdown files that you can add here in the middle. So in order to do that, we create a little folder called includes underscore includes. And if we have a folder here, any file, any Markdown file that you add can be added to your index here. So I'll tell you what, I'll create a little file here. First one is just hello.md, and all I'm just gonna say here, hi everyone, I am Aditya Oberai, and I realize I didn't add two spaces here, so I'm gonna do that, and I'll add those here as well, just because we'll need those. I'll create another little markdown here. This one's gonna be called portfolio.md, and the reason I have this name here is because I want to, well, just share my portfolio just as earlier. So I'm just gonna directly add a link here, and I'll add my domain, and that's that. Now if we go back to our initial index, we can actually include these files using the specific little pieces. So if we have curly braces here and we have two of these percentage signs in the middle, we can add include hello.md. Similarly, I'm just gonna add the portfolio.md, and this will allow us to actually show the exact markdown content in those files here on the index. So if I go ahead and I commit these now, leverage our the Git editor here, the terminal's good. It's actually pretty good to work with stuff as well, and that's a bash terminal, if you can see. So standard stuff, it's good to work with. I am gonna add a commit message, MD files to be included. So as you see, it's added and included those. So I'm just gonna push this. Fun thing, you can actually check the entire Git log for your project by just going to this command, Git log. So it'll show you all your commands and all of that, which is nice, which is pretty nice. So we're gonna go back now. Oh, I'll tell you. It's taking us through the entire log. Anyway, fun stuff. So if I go ahead, reload my website once again, you'll see that those changes have been made because we had that included, right? One amazing use case of GitHub Pages and Jekyll particularly is that it helps you manage blogs and posts very easily. So let's try a bit of that. All right. Sure, I'm stuck at the end, but anyway. Yeah, so for that purpose, I think the first thing you need to do is create another little folder called underscore posts. And this is something, if you're not actually sure about that Jekyll documentation that I had earlier, you can read about it there. I'll tell you what, I'll just show you how to go about it. So if you look at the Jekyll documentation, we have posts here, which is where you can understand how to create posts. There is a very specific format that we need to follow here when we're creating posts for our date and time. It's mandatory. Without that, posts doesn't work. And even after that, there are a few other things that we need to have in our metadata that I'll tell you how to add. So we're just going to hop back. Here in posts, we'll create a new file and we're going to name it in this exact same format, which is year, month, date, and then your format. So in our case, we'll just use today's date. So 2021, 09 and 30. Hyphenate that and we'll have our title next. In this case, I just want to, it's a test blog. So I'm just going to write test blog .md. All right. So within here now, it's necessary for us to add our metadata as well. All right. So for that, the basic things that we need to include are our title, which is test blog in this case. Your date is necessary, again in the exact same format. So 2021, 09, 30. And this format is necessary, otherwise it doesn't compile, it doesn't work. Now, once this is done, you can have, whatever text you want. So, hi, this is a test blog. All right. That's what we're gonna keep here in our test blog for now. All right. And I'll tell you what, once this is ready, we can go ahead. That's still not working. I'm just gonna, oops. Sorry, Control Y. I was trying to find a quicker way to clear and I didn't realize that. I'll just close it, but never mind. Your typical VS Code commands work, so you're good to go. So we're just gonna go ahead, add these again. Commit message would be add post. Sweet, simple, and we're gonna push it. So if I reload now, nothing's happened because it's still, it's just got pushed and it's deploying, I guess. Takes a few seconds at times. Let me just hop back. I'll have a look at where we are in that process. The good thing is, GitHub lets you know all of this information directly. So pretty convenient. Okay, so it should have deployed by now. I can just go ahead and, well, I'm not able to see it, which is funny. Oof. Yeah, well, let me see. Let me figure out what happened there. This happens from time to time, but it seems like it compiled properly, so it should have shown that, the posts. Let's see if we went wrong somewhere. I think, we can add a layout. The layout was supposed to be that of a post, so that might be an issue. In any case, if that doesn't happen, no worries. I can show an example of another little website that I'd created earlier that does have a post, so we can check that out. Okay, so if I try to figure out, I'm just trying to kind of figure out how to get this up and running. We'll just add this back again. Let me see if this was, this actually might not have been saved, and that kind of becomes a little thing at times. So let me check my Git status once. Okay, that's what happened. I forgot to save this file, so it didn't get added initially. I'm going to use a little quick shortcut here that says git commit A, which just commits whatever files you have. It's a little shortcut to commit them all, and it adds you can enter a message for your changes on your own, all of that. So I'm just gonna write add post again, and we're gonna close this. So as soon as that's done, it's gonna push it back again, which should show us that change now. That's what happened. We forgot to kind of save the file. So let me check at our latest commit here. That I actually have to push. My bad. Sorry about that. We make these mistakes from time to time. Totally happens. It's all right. Should be all right now. Yep, we have our post there now. Now, it just takes a little time to get started, deployment, and that's done. So if I go back to my website now, it still doesn't have it. I'm not sure why. It should have been up there. That's actually something weird. But anyway, I'll just maybe have a look at posts. We'll see. We'll try to straight up copy this format. All right. And if that works, that works. If that doesn't, well, happens. So in this case, I'll tell you what, we'll just use this format because, you know, it's an example here for us and really nothing more than that. I'll try changing up some of the things here with this file as well. So let me see, let me save this and okay, that's just open editors. Let me go back here. I'm gonna play around, rename the file. We'll just save it as 29 because it doesn't really matter. Yeah. And we'll just go ahead, commit a, change post, and we'll push it. Hopefully it should be all right now. Okay, there it is. There it is, finally. So I guess what would have happened is it was just showing an older version of, well, the website here for me, because if I look at it, the title is the old one and not the new one. So if I probably change it and reload it now, it's going to show a different title here for us. But that's essentially, if I maybe, if it works, that's what it is. So you can actually check this out. Now for a little activity, what I want to do is I want to create a little issue. I want to add first contributor. So for that, I'm going to send over the link here. Actually, tell you what, through a PR. That's a pull request. So I'm going to send over the link for this repository in the chat. And what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead, visit posts, in this repository that we have. Okay, I figured out what exactly happened. This is kind of weird, but I don't see the posts folder here. So that's pretty weird. That should not be an issue. But anyway, in that case, I'll tell you what, let's hop over to include, let's go over to hello and just add a new line mentioning, I am whatever your name is. All you need to do is you just have to go ahead to the repo I've sent, fork it. What that'll do is it'll allow you to fork it to your personal account. All right. And we'll add that change. So if there's anyone who wants to go ahead, I'm going to merge that PR on screen right now and show you how we have it, how, you can use Markdown here with the pull request to actually, solve an issue. So if any of you wants to go ahead, take a little try at that, that would actually be lovely. I'd be very happy to see that. In the meantime, I'm going to investigate why that post isn't showing up here. Let me delete this other old branch. But ideally, we should have posts in here. So if I look at, okay, so this is kind of getting deleted.
Any people you want about how you bring these values to life. And then finally,
yeah. Did anyone go ahead, fork it? I'd love to have someone here try it out. It would actually be great because we do have a practical component here. So it'd be nice to see that. Otherwise, no worries. I'll tell you what, I have a few personal, organizations. I can probably fork it off to one of my other organizations and show a demo here. So as I forked it over, you can see that this is on the other organization I have, and it shows that it's forked from that original one. So we've got a few different things here. The first one is contribute. The second one is fetch upstream, which basically means that if my branch is ever behind the original, this can fetch all of those changes back for me. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go back to hello. I'll just add a little line. Add to participate in reactor sessions. Great. So we're just gonna make a little change. I'm gonna say add line. Just I'm gonna do it for the sake, like, just to show a commit message. For now, you can have something more meaningful later on. And I'm gonna commit the change. So now that I go back to my code, it'll show that my branch is one commit ahead of the original. And you can actually contribute this back by opening a pull request. So if I, as I create a pull request, it's going to show the base repository as earlier, but instead of the branch, we now have the forked repository instead. Oh, did I? Oh my God, I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, I'm just gonna. Sorry, that's my bad. You can still make a contribution. I'd be happy to take something. What if you want to add? And I'm gonna try and debug that posts issue just after this. But now that you see, you can see that we made a change here. This is from the perspective of the organization I made. All right, so I'm gonna create a pull request here now. If suppose I was, to now go back to my account, now we're back at my account, my repository. You're not going to see these changes directly for always. I can see because these were two of my own accounts. Probably if you would open it, you wouldn't be able to see some of the settings I show now, which is to start to see options like merge pull request, which are basically available to maintainers. So when I made that commit from the other organization that I had, I can see the files that were changed. I can actually review these changes. In this case, it's a simple little change. I just set it as viewed. But that being said, I can go ahead, I can add comments. Nice line. And, I can add that single comment. And since I've been through these, I just go ahead. Can't approve. Okay, pull request owners can't approve their own. I'm just going to submit a review. Yeah, that's something that's there with multiple contributors, but in our case, change works. I'm just going to comment that. We can still have, if someone else wants to fork and try it out, we can. Okay, I see a couple of folks. That's nice. So if any of you make this change, you can also have that line in, and I'll merge yours as well. So in our case, now that I'm back at pull requests, I can see that this here works. So I can merge the pull request. I can actually, okay, before that, there's a little thing that I want to mention, and that says solves #1, which, it's a really cool feature how we can actually refer to other issues and factors here. So if I go ahead, I refer to that issue I had, I can just add a comment there. And this is something that's actually going to be reflected in the issue I have as well. So here it shows that it got mentioned, which is a way of how you can actually, refer to other features. This is GitHub flavored Markdown for you. It's how Markdown lets you collaborate and work better. So now that I'll just merge this pull request, it's gonna merge that initial commit I had to main, just like how we merged the branch earlier. So that's there. Now that we're kind of at least through with this point, I'm just gonna copy this little example back over, and I'm gonna try and add a little post there directly from, well, from in here, so that at least we can have a functioning post. So I'm just gonna create a new file. We're gonna go underscore posts hyphen, yeah, well, 2021 hyphen 09 hyphen 30 hyphen test dot md. Gonna paste this over, and we're just gonna leave it as, welcome to Jekyll for now. The commit can be create post. So I'll just commit this file quickly, and hopefully, oh, I see we have more PRs, which is really cool. I'll show how these changes come up. So, in the meantime, while our first post kind of gets ready, I'm just gonna hop over there to see what's happening here. And yeah, seems like the page is built. So hopefully we'll have a post now. And we still don't. I have no idea why now. Honestly, that's just, I guess, a GitHub thing. For now, it shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, I just hope I didn't kind of jump the gun on that. It could have just been that I had to reload the page once. Okay, finally posts work. So when you create the posts folder and you have a little post in there, it shows the date, as we mentioned. That's why the format is necessary. And if I click on it, you can find the blog here, which is why it becomes pretty cool for blogs or documentation. And yeah, now that I see we have a few pull requests, I'll take one open right now. So if I look at the file, I see we have an addition to our README. I know there's a README addition. I can add it over. It works. Just gonna add a comment. You should be more meaningful in your reviews. This is just kind of a speed. This is not something that will come up in the website though, because it's in the README. If you would add something to one of our includes file or something, that'll probably make I can show that reflected. So let me see. Let's hope if the other pull request has a change in a file. Fun thing, you can actually assign reviewers. You can assign labels. You can have certain projects or milestones. In this case, we don't have an issue linked, but we can do that. So if I look at the file now, here we have an interesting new little change. So if I go back now, I can actually make this change. But before that, there's something that we'll have to resolve, and that's a conflict. Now, a merge conflict happens when we have a certain line there instead. And then there's another person who commits to a previous commit, someone who's forked a previous commit and contributed to that. The easiest way to resolve this is before you commit, if you just pull upstream, it can get you all the changes. But in this case, I can actually resolve this myself. So I can just remove these changes, take that in, mark is resolved, and commit the merge. Page is out of date. Okay, never mind. Okay, yeah. So what that did essentially was that it committed back on your, it added a commit to this pull request where I removed the conflicts, and now it's ready to merge. So if I confirm merge now, we'll be able to see a new deployed version of the website, which has this update there as well. So I'm just gonna hop over to our build, refresh it. Yeah, it's just a couple of, yeah. So hi Aditya, this is Venkat, is in there now, which is awesome. So that's how you can collaborate, how you can work. You can reference issues, all of that using Markdown and GitHub. It's a pretty nifty tool, especially if you want to create your own blogs, if you want to create other cool stuff. And you can actually use a variety of different templates that GitHub has that have been built. So if I look at these themes here, we have the Minima theme on right now, but there's a variety of themes that you can try out. So if I zoom back out, this is make things a little easier to view. We have a few of these themes available. You can actually select these themes right now. One like Slate here is actually something that you can view. The code for this you can actually view on GitHub. So that's the layout that you have available. And it's used by 917,000 people. So that should probably be a good sign of how impactful and useful this is. All right, so you can actually choose these themes as well if you want. And these are all pretty nice. Look, they look great. So sure, if you want to ever come up with your portfolio or a little documentation or a resume web, something like that quickly, this is a great resource, especially if you're newer into the world of web development, because you don't have to work with a more complex markup language. Markdown is made to be human readable, and that does simplify our experience. So that was about it for for this session. I'd love to see any feedback if you have that. Or even if you have any queries. Let's take a sip of water. Thanks, Manam. Thanks, Evgeny. If you still have any queries, oh yeah, sorry, I had to share a little resource around GitHub. Let me share that in the chat. So GitHub has their own learning labs that you can actually access. And yeah, it's basically available at lab.github.com. They've got quite a few different courses there. The first one being Introduction to GitHub. That's one of the most popular courses. Another one is Communicating using Markdown. So you can actually leverage all of these different courses here. And well, learn how to work with GitHub. So yes, that is the resource I wanted to share. That's how you can get started with GitHub. I guess if we don't have other queries, Rashmita, we should be good to go.
Yes. I think we don't have any other questions. So thank you so much, Aditya, for this lovely session. And thank you all for joining us today. Please feel free to do event check-in and share your feedback about today's session. It will help us to choose our topics better. Also, please visit our Microsoft Reactor Bengaluru meetup page for more upcoming session. Thank you all once again and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, then. See you all. Bye-bye.